Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this video is 13 solo games for every time frame, or hopefully a title more catchy than that. But this is not the 10 best solo games of all time. I did that video a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, a while ago. I did that video a while ago. I'm going to have to redo that video. I'm just waiting for a few games to show up that I think are strong contenders for it. This is not that video. This instead is picking a bunch of time frames. I'm going to be going from as low as 10 minutes all the way up to 60-ish hours, although you could go longer and you could go shorter if you want, picking a great solo game for every single time frame, starting off with Numbsters. Numbsters is going to be a 10-minute solo experience from Button Shy Games. This is a game which you're going to have a hand of cards, and it's all based around the idea that 7, 8, 9. You know the joke, why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. Well, that's true in this game because you have a number 8 that is trying to eat the other cards as long as it's in between two otherwise adjacent numbers. So, for instance, the 8 can eat the 6 and the 7, or the 8 can have the 6 eat the 7, the 8 can have the 1 eat the 2. But there's also little number rules in play, and it's all about these small hand manipulation in a game that takes 10 minutes and overall gives you a very solid and rewarding experience for those 10 minutes of time. And a recent new addition to the collection as well. Then in other Button Shy games, this one going to be a 15-minute one, we have Sprawlopolis. Now Sprawlopolis also has Agropolis and Naturopolis, and it has a whole bunch of series and Combopolis to mix them all together. But Sprawlopolis is a solo game that takes 15 minutes, and it's one in which you're laying down cards. You can lay them on each other or next to each other, all while trying to be mindful of 3 scoring conditions, and every single card has scoring conditions as you flip them, so every single game is going to be totally different in terms of which 3 scoring conditions you have and how you're trying to build out your city, being mindful of placing too many roads, being mindful of having your terrains touching the right types of terrains, and ultimately fulfilling your scoring goals. This would be a 15-minute experience that plays well in 15 minutes. And speaking of 15 minutes, today I'm happy to partner with Mint Mobile, who reached out offering for me to try out their plan and talk about it, and I was like, actually, I switched to your plan a few months ago. Basically, a few months ago, around, I want to say December time or so, I saw offers for like Mint Mobile as low as $15 a month, and I decided to give it a shot because I was paying $50 to $60 a month, and I didn't really know, hey, if I can save money every single month, why not give it a shot? I switched over, I have seen no real drop in speeds, no real drop in data loss. I've been traveling across the country, using GPS, all that stuff, and had no real issues. And so overall, I've been able to save money every single month I think I'm on the $15 a month plan right now, and without any compromise in service on the nation's largest 5G LTE network. I'll go ahead and have links down below. Please make sure to use the links down below so that they know that I sent you. I'll throw a link in the top of the description. But basically, Mint Mobile, you can have plans for as low as $15 a month. They have intro plans, 3-month options to sign up. You can bring your own phone. They have phone options. You can buy some of theirs and get offers there as well. But overall, I'm currently on the $15 a month plan and have been enjoying using it. And so it's one that I'm happy to talk about because it's a service I actually currently use and have been enjoying, or enjoying is the wrong word, have been saving money every single month while not compromising on my service. And with that, let's move to the next one, which is going to be the 30-minute. We have Under Falling Skies is going to be our 30-minute game. This is one that plays, box says 20 to 40 minutes. I find you can consistently get it done. 20 is a little ambitious. If you're knocking out a game of Under Falling Skies in 20 minutes, I am impressed. But as far as a game that this gives you dice manipulation in the sense that you are basically rolling dice every single round and then assigning them to try to power up your mine or whatever it is. Not mine. You want to generate power, you want to shoot down ships, and you want to try to generate research so you can slowly take out and research the enemy vessels in this kind of Independence Day themed experience of dice manipulation and assigning it in a solo puzzle. I really enjoy this one. I've liked this one since I first played it and it's stayed in my collection for quite some time now. This is a really enjoyable game from CGE that just gives you a Independence Day taking down the spaceship kind of vibe as you assign and manipulate dice in this game. That's going to be our 30-minute one. Then coming in at 45 minutes, we have The Loop. Now this is where I do tell you that many of these games are not specifically solo games. They are games that I enjoy playing solo. And in the case of The Loop, I'd say about half my plays have been solo. And when you're playing it with multiple players, it can take longer than 45 minutes. The box over here says 60 minutes. That's probably accurate when you're playing with more players. As a solo game, I tend to knock this out in around 45 minutes as I try to puzzle out how to defeat the various scenarios you're engaging in. I love The Loop from Pandasaurus Games. I think it's a ton of fun and just gives you a very solid, rewarding experience of how to address a system that's throwing cubes at you and you're trying to figure out how to puzzle out the loops, which is where you kind of spend an energy and retake a bunch of actions, and you can keep triggering loops, which gives you this puzzle of how and what item cards do you line up, when do you trigger loops, and how do you manipulate the board so you can accomplish the missions before a bunch of catastrophes. I can't remember what they're called. Whatever they are, when you have too much negative energy in the spot and it blows up. There's a term for it. I can't remember. But you're trying to basically make sure you win the game before you lose the game. And it comes with a bunch of scenarios. And the scenarios give you variability in addition to the gameplay that already gives you characters and cards and tons of variability to the experience. I really enjoy the Loop from Pandasaurus games. For our 60-minute spot, and this is one where I don't know for sure. Let's see. I think here we go. Let me try to take this out. I put them in the wrong order here. For our 60-minute spot, we have Marvel Champions, and then the 60-minute conversation part is variable. You see, Marvel Champions is one that, and this is a box from One Sharp Joe, by the way. Highly recommend these boxes for your Marvel Champions collection. He has stuff for a ton of different options over here, but I use them for my Marvel Champions, for my Dominion, for my Marvel Champions, for my Dominion. I think, and I use them for Twilight Inscription. A bunch of these boxes, but either way, this is Marvel Champions, and the 60 minutes is variable. It depends on if you count deck building or not. It also depends on what you're doing, but you can easily knock out a game of Marvel Champions in 60 minutes as you put together your deck and take down a variety of different enemies in the game. There's a ton of content for this game, way too much content. I don't know what I'm going to do with this game or when I'm going to play it properly, because I dive into this game and the more cards I get, the harder it is to build a deck on the fly, and I like building decks on the fly as I go through this. But this is an LCG experience, a living card game experience, in which a living card game, limited card game. I can't remember anymore. Either way, you're basically building decks using these pre-bought packs that you can try to figure out which of the 4 attributes you're going to use, which hero you're going to use, and which enemies you're going to face off against. It is absolutely a game you can play with more than one players. I personally find that my favorite ways to play it are either pure solo or two-handed solo, where I'm controlling 2 different characters. I find throwing another player into the mix does result in a fun experience, but it's not my go-to way to play the game. It's just that, hey, I'll have a fun time playing with you. Why not? We'll work together, we'll team up, we'll have a good conversation. But I find the number crunching of Marvel Champions is so intensely rewarding that I often find myself puzzling it out, especially the harder enemies you're fighting against. I find I concentrate purely on what's going on at the table to the point that it works well as a 2-player game for me if I'm playing it a little more casually, and when I'm trying to fight against the harder enemies, the deck building and gameplay is much more intense in terms of what I'm doing at the table or what I'm trying to do, and less focused on the conversation. From there, we have our 90-minute experience, which is going to be Spirit Island. Now, Spirit Island is an incredible game. I still have not played with Jagged Earth, but I have played with Branch and Claw. Those are expansions for the game. Spirit Island is a puzzle experience that, again, definitely does not need to be played solo, but to me, this is the game that I credit with the game that brought me into solo gaming. I tried solo games before, and they never captured my attention quite enough, versus Spirit Island was the first time I was like, oh, I understand why you'd want to play a game solo. I understand the puzzle and the compelling aspect of trying to figure out how to overcome a set of challenges, and in Spirit Island, you constantly feel like you're losing. This is a game which you're taking control of the Dahan, you're playing as a spirit as you fight off the invading natives and all their buildings that they're constructing, as you try to, not invading natives, as you fight off the invading invaders, as you try to protect the natives and destroy all their buildings and intimidate them through sheer amount of fear and destruction, tearing them apart, and using the combination of spirits in the game and the puzzle of how to use different spirits and to take them down. Again, I like playing a pure solo, I like playing a two-handed solo. I enjoy this game with multiple players, by the way. This is one that Marvel Champions I feel takes a bit of a hit for me when I play with multiple players. I'm still happy to do it, but goes down a bit. Versus Spirit Island, playing as 2 or 3 players, equally fun and compelling, and because of how complex your spirits are, it very much removes the alpha player problem in the sense that you can't take care of everyone's turn. You kind of have to do the best you can and just hope that it's enough as you repel the spirits using handfuls of powers and abilities. Handfuls of powers and abilities. It's just every single spirit comes with their own starting powers and the way their board works, and then you're building out around what that spirit's doing and trying to account for the weak spots, lean into their strengths, and really just intimidate and destroy the various invaders in the game. Lots of fun, tons of scenarios, tons of expansions, tons of ways to play, tons of content in Spirit Island. Coming in at 2 hours, we have to do some box manipulation here. We're going to move this over here and then move it all back in a second. Coming in at the 2-hour mark, if you're looking for a 2-hour experience, and this is definitely a variable one, this can go either way, but we're going to go ahead and pick Burncycle for our 2-hour long experience over here. Let me move my coffee out of the way. In fact, this is a good opportunity for a coffee break at the moment because I've been going for long enough. Anyways, Burncycle. Burncycle is going to be our 2-hour long experience, and I say kind of comes with a bit of a caveat because Burncycle is a game that you can play at 1, 2, or 3 floors. Basically, you're invading these corporations, you're playing as these robots who are trying to infiltrate the corporations and take them down, and the problem is, not really problem, is when you're playing the game, you can choose a 1, 2, or 3 floor game. And a 1 floor game comes in, I would say, at around an hour and a half. A 2 floor game is generally a good 2 hours, sometimes to 2.5 hours. And a 3 floor floor game, you're signing up for a 3+ hour long experience. That said, it's enjoyable at all those player counts, but I'm only going to give it one of these spots, so I'm going to give it the 2-hour spot as far as a game that gives you an incredibly rewarding puzzle. I love Burncycle. Playing it solo is absolutely my favorite way to play this game, as you take control of a bunch of robots, and again, I usually play with 2 robots plus the command module, I think it's called, which is a third robot that's always in the game to give you things to do. And then controlling those robots, leveling them up, again, powers and abilities, trying to gather various gears and modules, and going through the experience, trying to figure out how to outwit and outmaneuver the enemies, using the abilities of your command module, using the abilities of your robots, leveling up and powering into those abilities as you try to figure out how to break through doors and how to move up to the next level and how to take down the boss in a ton of different, not really boss, take down the whoever you need to deal with, the captain often, but you're usually trying to avoid things in the game. It's usually about what you're trying to accomplish while avoiding conflict, but dealing with conflict when you need to. The game is incredibly rewarding and gives you a strong tactical puzzle. I really enjoy Burncycle and highly recommend it. Again, for me, I enjoy it best solo, and playing it 1 floor is good. I always enjoy a 1 floor experience. 2 floors to me is where it's at. 3 is just a little bit too much as far as just how much time it takes. 3 floors, I may have only played 3 floors twice, but 2 floors is usually my most common go-to when I'm playing through Burncycle. An excellent experience. Straight off this Chip Theory Games, our 3-hour title is going to be Too Many Bones, and for this I am showing you this because I always have my Too Many Bones in a trove chest, which makes it very hard to actually show you the box because I'm not carrying a trove chest over here, although I could show you this part over here. We got some nice stuff over here, some credits, a knife and things and all that stuff. But yeah, Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is going to be my 3-hour long experience, and again, like Burncycle, you definitely have variety here. You could be playing this game as a 90-minute experience if you're playing the quick bosses and you know what you're doing, or you could be playing this game as a 5-hour experience depending on just how much you're trying to go with. Too Many Bones is just a very, very good time as far as one of the best games in my collection. I think it was my number 6 game of all time, and a game that, again, I enjoy playing this solo, not necessarily the most, but I'd say solo and 2-player are my preferred player counts of Too Many Bones. 3 and 4, I don't think I've played it at 4, but even 3 slows down the game enough for me that I'd rather play it at 1 and 2, but and also there's a difficulty adjustments to aspect. When you're playing at higher player counts, usually you have to make the game harder because the game is not as well balanced at 3 and 4 players. It gets a little easier for the gear locks. But this is a game which you're leveling up your characters in a way that is as rewarding as no other game that I've played. The sheer amount of complexity and just uniqueness every single gear lock brings to the table when you're playing through this RPG dice rolling adventure is just incredibly fun. Learning a new character, I've played board games that are more complicated to learn the entire game than learning a new character in Too Many Bones. You could probably learn and understand Under Falling Skies faster than you can pick up a new character and properly understand how to utilize and operate them in the game. And that might sound like a con, and it might be a con depending on who you are. For me, it's an absolute pro because of the fact that this is a game where I have all the content for it, and I haven't gone through half of it because every single new character is a commitment, but also a journey and exploration. When I talk about games and how I want to see more variety and more ways of feeling how I'm going to dive into the experience, that is not a problem I have with Too Many Bones because there's so much content, so much variety content, and just a rewarding experience. So you figure out how to manipulate the grid. There's a 4x4 grid you're fighting on, unless you're playing with Undertow, there's other spots as well. But you're trying to figure out how to manipulate the baddies, use your powers and abilities, and level up throughout the experience to be most efficient in the game. It's just an incredibly good time. Coming at 4 hours long, we have Mage Knight. Mage Knight is, again, not exclusively solo, but for me, a game I've only played solo because playing it at 2 players is just a incredibly long time. If you're playing this at 2 players, this can easily be a 6 to 7 hour long game, depending on what you're doing and what scenarios and all that. But even as a solo experience, this is a 3 to 4 hour long experience, but it's a rewarding 3 to 4 hour long experience. 3 hours if you really know what you're doing. 4 hours I'd say is more common. I have never played this game in a short time frame. This game is always set up on my table for like either multiple days or just the whole night when I'm diving into it, but it is rewarding when I do so. Mage Knight from Vladish Vatil is an absolute brilliant masterpiece of a game. There's a reason this is constantly recommended as one of the best solo games of all time. Every single year, whenever you see solo lists, Mage Knight is almost always on it because it's just a ridiculously good game. And with that, we're going to move to 7th Continent, which is going to be our 1 to 2 day long experience. At this point, we're moving past hours and into days. We move from 4 hours to 1 to 2 days. A single curse in 7th Continent could be I want to say around a 7 hour long adventure, although it can vary. I'd probably pick 7 because of 7th Continent, but it's somewhere in that range, 6 to 8 hours to go through a curse, lose or win. And you have multiple curses in the box, which means for me, This is a 1 to 2 day long experience. I might play it over, you know, several, I don't know, I might play it over a week or whatnot, but it gives you that 1 to 2 day experience as far as the amount of content, unless you're sitting down for 7 hours. I'm not calling this a 7-hour experience. I'm calling it a 1 to 2 day experience, but it's one that gives you a sense of exploration and discovery like no other game system does, except for 7th Citadel, which is I'm anxiously waiting on. I think 7th Citadel will replace 7th Continent for me in my collection, but the amount of content there is as you try to figure out how to play cards, how to explore, and how to craft the various tools you need to stay alive in this game. 7th Continent is just an incredibly rewarding experience that is a lot of fun to go through as you just journey around the island, figuring out how to solve this curse that is not always clear what you're doing. You're kind of looking at pathways, following clues, and hoping for the best as you struggle to stay alive in a game of journey and exploration. And again, a game that could be played at more than one player, but for me, playing it solo is where it's at, because playing it at 2, you're trying to, like, it slows the game down. It slows the game down, and you're looking at cards together, and you're reading everything out loud. I find just playing this almost like a book, like a choose your own adventure as I go through it. Choose your own adventure with a degree of tactical manipulation and mechanical, trying to master the game. Overall, 7th Continent is just an incredibly fun 1 to 2 day long experience in the 6 to 8 hours or so. Coming in at around 10 games. At this point, we're measuring games and sessions instead of hours, but coming in at 10 games, we have Wild Assent. Wild Assent is a game, I don't want to put this, I guess I could put it outside, it's probably fine. Wild Assent to me is one of my incredibly fun campaign games that you play at 10 games at a time. You play this game in 10 game shots, so you're going to go ahead and have a campaign of 10 games. Then when you're done with that, you could dive back in for your next campaign of 10 games. Although it could arguably be less than that if you lose, because if you lose, then you're done, you're over. You can reset and start again, which is not bad in a 10 game series. It's much, much worse in a 70 game series, but Wild Assent, to me, gives you a bunch of seekers, and you're in the wilds trying to capture and hunt the various creatures as they get stronger and stronger in the game. And then in between games, you have an encampment phase. I think it's called an encampment phase. But you have a phase where you're going to level up your buildings, gather more weapons, hire more workers, and try to basically level up and power up in the game so you can unlock your various abilities. Your characters come into play with their own basic ability, but then they have 5 more abilities they can unlock depending on the strengths of the various buildings you add, which means you're constantly trying to grow and improve just how much your seekers can get done in the game, and it's so rewarding. Levon Rising, which is the expansion that was on GameFound that is not yet delivered, I don't know when it will be, but that adds even more complexity or even more ways to dive into it by giving you kind of a choose-your-own-adventure journey in between games, which is also incredibly rewarding to go through, while keeping all the things I liked about Levon Rising, but giving you, about Wild Assent, while giving you a better story and just more variety as far as how you can engage with the experience. Wild Assent is excellent. It's a 10 game campaign system, but a ton of fun. I really enjoy it, really recommend it. Coming in at 20 plus games we have, or 20-ish games, we have Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed, this is the smaller box version of it, because I don't want to show you the giant box version, because that would be, as it is, this table's running out of room. But Assassin's Creed comes in at around 20 games. I have to double check the exact count, but it's around 20 games for the campaign. That's before you dive into other stuff, and it's just a lot of fun, but it is a 20 game commitment. This is one, these games are heavy. I did not realize how heavy these games are. This is like a lot. But either way, Assassin's Creed is a ton of fun as far as being, again, to me, primarily a solo adventure. One that I've played with multiple players. I've played at 1, 2, and 3 players, and I like it best as a solo puzzle as I try to figure out how to move around the board, how to stay stealthy, how to go through the campaign, being mindful of your brotherhood, kind of, again, a similar encampment type situation as you level up your own headquarters in the game. There's just a ton of fun to be had here, and a ton of gear and equipment, and just, it feels like the video game. It very much has that feel of a video game as you take down various enemies, as you blend into the crowd, as you find different ways to hide, use different abilities to stay under the radar, until eventually at a certain point you'll have to do something that will trigger the guards chasing you down through town, and hopefully at that point you can escape. It very much has the same feel of the video game in an incredibly rewarding experience in Triton Noir. I believe the expansion is currently on Kickstarter, or coming up shortly on Kickstarter. You can check that out as well if you want to dive into that. But that is Assassin's Creed, an excellent experience. Which brings us to the last one, and the last one for me, and it's worth noting I don't have Gloomhaven or Frosthaven here, primarily because those are games that I play as primarily with 2 players plus. I find that that's an experience that I actually do like having more players, as opposed to this one, which this next one is one that I have played multiple players, but I like it most as a solo experience, and that is Tanares Adventures is going to be our 30 plus game session thing. I think it's 30 plus games. It's like, depends on how you count a game in this one, because there's 6 weeks, 5.5 weeks, whatever it is. Each week has at least 4 games, so it's really closer to around 25-ish games, but then you also have the city phases and the world phases. You have a lot of sessions of gameplay here. For me, this is easily going to be 30 sessions plus. I find each game is usually around 2 sessions of sitting down, but overall, Tanares Adventures is going to be my pick for the longest solo experience I personally am recommending over here. There's plenty of others out there. This is just me picking one game for every one of a bunch of different counts, but I love Tanares Adventures. I love Arena of the Contest, the game it's based on, and the follow-up it is. This is the campaign expansion that takes all the things you liked about Arena of the Contest and puts it into a campaign with a story mode, with a city that you're trying to upgrade and be mindful of keeping it in pace with your players, with a world that you're trying to be mindful of as well, so you can level up and unlock all your campaign perks as you go through this experience and adventure. Again, every individual session is going to be around 3 hours, and you have 20 plus of those. You're looking at 60 to 80 hours to dive into this, and there's a ton of replayability baked in as well, because that amount of time, the 60 to 80 hours, is only going to have you going through around 20 to 25 games, but then there's 100 different scenarios you can go through in this game because of the branching choose your own adventure aspects of it. And so you're never really going to see all that the game has to offer in a single playthrough. You'll have to dive into it again and again and again to see all the stuff that this game wants to bring to your table. Tanares Adventures, I'm loving this one and having a ton of fun with it. That's going to be my longest pick on the table at 30 plus sessions. Again, depends on how you count it. And with that, these are going to be your 13 solo games. I tried going, again, all the way down from 10 minutes to 15 minutes to 30, 45, 60, 90, 120 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 1 to 2 days, 10 games, 20 games, and 30-ish games are going to be the various games you have on the table. There's a lot of solo gaming out there, and a lot of options for you. And then some point later this year, I'll probably be refilming my 10 best solo games, which is going to be less about the number or the length of time, and much more about the actual 10 best solo games in my collection that I'm currently into these days. Things have changed since the last one. The last time I did a 10 best solo games, I think maybe half of them are the same, maybe, and the rest have changed, so there's definitely some updates to go through. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.